Okay, everybody, I think we'll go ahead and get started. We have an agenda that we've kind of written out to help us go forward, hopefully staying on track and going quick, to cover all bases and everything. Ben's going to lead the meeting, but I'm going to open us up in prayer. So if everybody bow your head. Dear Lord, help us today. We are in the discernment process of answering some questions in our direction on the church. We really need help with this. There are people that are struggling, some with, like me, struggling with knowing your word and your way. Others have other areas of it that they're having trouble with. Help us keep a loving heart. Keep us on the path that we love you and want to do what you want. Help us focus on loving each other, loving our neighbor, and making disciples of Jesus Christ, of you. Amen. Okay.
I thought, so my name is Ben Pauly. I'm the chairman of the admin board. And I thought a good way to start this would be to describe a little history of what got us here. I'm not sure I'm the best person to describe that history. Is that you,
I will give it an attempt.
Okay.
Okay. A few years back, I started going to annual conference. And before I went to annual conference, the yearly meeting, I did not have a clue about church politics. Okay, I've been a Methodist all my life. I've never been the best studier of the Bible, but I've improved since then. And I've been shown a lot of things, opened a lot of subjects to me that I didn't realize, what that meant. In the Book of Discipline, in the Methodist Church, it does not allow for same-sex marriage. In the Book of Discipline, it doesn't allow to have an openly gay minister. And what that means exactly, I can't define to you, and I won't even try. But in the current atmosphere, there are a lot of churches, a lot of people that are trying to get the Book of Discipline changed. And every year that I go to annual conference, something comes up to change that. Now, why is that important? I'm going to call it a traditional side and a progressive side. The traditional side does not, the definition of marriage, if you believe in the biblical definition of marriage as being between a man and a woman, then let's call that traditional. Progressive side is through the suggested changes are trying to change it where the Methodist Church has same-sex marriages. Now, Reverend Engstrom and I were just talking, and he again says, and this was just in a conversation. He's not pushing this, and he's not overstepping being here at the meeting or anything like that. But that we would never be forced in this church to have a wedding that way. And I am not so much sure on that. That's my opinion. This is an opinion, and we all have to make up our own minds. But if the greater Methodist Church does it, how will we not? And do we want to be a part of that? If we have a minister that has a different perspective and gets assigned here, everybody knows it's very obvious that there are shortages of ministers right now. So if you have to take somebody and they have a different perspective and the Book of Discipline changes, what does that do to us? And we've had a minister that had a different perspective, 10, 15 years ago, and it didn't go well. And not picking on the person, but Bonnie, I think was her name. That time I wasn't active in the church. And it really divided up the church here. There's a lot of biblical changes, meanings. I've been told by different ministers that there's a difference in seminary changes, teaching. And there's two philosophies. And it has to do with Jesus dying on the cross and Him being our Savior. But we all agree on that. But it's how the Old Testament relates to the New Testament that I have questions on. And if it's what I have believed in my 64 years of life, then I'm a traditionalist, and I am probably leaning one way in this this question of disaffiliation. So that's what's getting us here, and I've came up in the last 2 weeks with an answer. As people keep Perry and I were talking last week, and why do we need to do this now? In 2024, at the General Conference, that's when the whole world of Methodists get back together, that's the earliest that they can change the Book of Discipline and vote on that change. Well, right now, behind our pulpits, our ministers, if they've got a point of view, it changes the ministry of the church today. And I have seen it between different ministers, especially when we go to meetings and I go to a different church. And I know I've asked Perry, we've been talking, and I've been trying to get it straight in my mind. So that's where I'm at. That's where I think the history is bringing us up. All this is proposed changes to the Book of Discipline. But at annual conference this year, we voted on things. The progressive side of the church is changing the United Methodist Church, in my opinion. And if that change continues, there will be changes that I can't accept in the United Methodist Church. Okay. And
to give a little, and I will stand for correction, please, but to give a little history, again, the movement to move to a more progressive stance in the church. The church as a whole allows churches to disaffiliate, and so that may be a new term for many of you, which basically says we will give up our relationship with the United Methodist Church. That doesn't mean we're giving up the church. That doesn't mean we're giving up. Oh, by the way, if you note, the red hymnals all say United Methodist Church. Those don't go away. It's a disaffiliation with the formal United Methodist Church. That's allowed. Then the question is, well, then what do? Well, there's this new world church that is a little more conservative stance. Am I correct in this? Am I describing this correctly? Okay, thank you. Global Methodist Church, thank you. And we as a congregation could say, you know what? I don't like the direction of the United Methodist Church, which we are members of. I think we should disaffiliate. Oh, we can do that, and then we could become a member of the Global Methodist Church. Right?
Or we could become independent.
We could become independent. We could decide to become a Presbyterian church or a Catholic church. We could do whatever we want. Or a Wesleyan church or whatever. So on what Virginia shared, there's two columns. There's the United Methodist Church, and then there's the Global Church. Mm-hmm. There are actually a number of other iterations that we could do. Mm-hmm. And the function to do that is to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church. But there's a lot of work that's involved there, and financial consequences of doing that.
Yes. And one other option is that at some point in time, the Methodist Church still has the door open to come back to the United Methodist Church. So, I mean, there's just a wide variety. The first decision is whether we disaffiliate or not. And if we disagree with the changes, the doctrine, thank you, of the United Methodist Church, where it is today or where it's going in the near future. And if we decide we don't want to follow that path, we disaffiliate, and then we have to have a lot more meetings and decisions on where we're going.
This might be a good time for questions. By the way, being a master in this whole thing is a full-time job plus. And I have not devoted my full-time job to this. We all have jobs, so
I'm not a master of it by any means.
I don't think we have a 100% expert in the room on this topic. So, Steve, you had a question.
So this doctrine, I can talk now.
No, we're recording. We've had numerous people that like to watch the.
So this doctrine, has it already been adopted? Do we have any guidelines? Do we know any of the such? I mean, obviously, you know, Bob attending the conference. Is the doctrine on the docket? Is the doctrine already happened? Do we have that language? Do we understand what these changes are? We said 2024. What does that mean? Is there a timeline that we're running against to make a decision? Do we have to make a decision? Can you guys enlighten us a little bit about that?
Greg, can you maybe address this?
I can address and speak to.
If I could jump in for just a second, the Book of Discipline can't get changed till 2024. Currently, under my understanding, there is no exact wordage in what that would change or not change. I mean, it's possible that it would get voted down as the world church. Now, on the short term, what we are hearing, another person told me about down in Florida, churches that want to disaffiliate are having to pay real estate, a tax, I'm going to call it. The price keeps jumping up. I've heard out in the Northeast that the amount of money, our bishop has been very clear that we pay our tithing a year in advance. Okay, great. Okay, that would be best, probably.
Let's do that.
But currently, nothing is changing.
And I'll answer questions because I do think, I believe in informed decisions. Mm-hmm. And I shared that I have my whole ministry that began in the mid-'80s. The church has been fighting over homosexuality for the past 40 years plus. I'm a part of the broad middle of the church. I'm a child of the church. I'm first and foremost a Christian, baptized in the United Methodist Church as an infant, and have grown up in the United Methodist Church and experienced grace, the grace of God in Jesus Christ, in all of my formative development, the support of members. You were talking about your youth that have gone off to college, and you're praying for them, and you should be. And their products, their formative experience began here. I've had that formative experience. But I'm a part of the broad middle of United Methodism. It's a very broad spectrum. We have conservatives, yes, conservative evangelicals. We have progressive liberals. The last church I served full-time for 14 years, I used to joke that we had a few closet conservative evangelicals, and I was pretty sure, well, they weren't so closet, but pretty sure we had a couple Unitarians over on the other side, So, but they came together in Jesus Christ. And in all of our Bible studies, there was agreement to disagree, but the conversation and the dialogue was to be centered on Jesus and on Scripture. But given that our understanding of Scripture is tied very much to our own life's experience, John Wesley said that in matters of faith, what is most important is Scripture, and then the quadrilateral of our faith is that reason, our experience, and the tradition of the church over time, all of those inform an understanding of Scripture. And interpretations vary on Scripture. I'm at a point, though, where I've had friends my whole ministry that are good news, and I've had friends my whole ministry that are liberal, and I've always told my good news friends, I'd like to hear more good news from you. because there it has felt like a lot of attack. And I've told my liberal friends, listen, you can't outright discount the people that believe different than you. You need to listen to them, understand where they are and where they're coming from in their experience. And there's legitimacy in the other side's position. So the problem with being a part of the broad middle of the church is what? In our culture, that broad middle has what? It's down, way down. And I have friends on both sides now that view me with suspicion because we're all supposed to choose up sides. I made that choice a long time ago. I chose Jesus Christ. Now, relative to all of this conversation, I told you the church has been fighting over this issue for my whole ministry. Early on, the conservatives placed in the discipline the wording that the practice of homosexuality is inconsistent with Christian teaching. And the liberals came back 4 years later and added, but gay individuals are no less persons of sacred worth to whom the church needs to be in ministry. So there's a tension. There's a tension between those two, and they've been fighting forever and ever. At the 2016 General Conference, and only the General Conference of United Methodism can speak for the denomination. The Council of Bishops do not speak for the denomination. Pastors do not speak for the denomination. The Book of Discipline speaks for the denomination. Every 4 years, General Conference meets. There are approximately 900 delegates from all around the world. 45% of the delegates come from what we call central conferences, which are annual conferences outside of the United States proper. And the 55% are United Methodist churches in the United States. And a lot of the churches, or a lot of delegates come from Africa, from Korea, the European continent, so the Philippines. The United Methodists are a world denomination. In 2016, things became very contentious over this subject as it had been growing, and the General Conference called a special General Conference for 2019, and that conference was to deal solely with this subject matter. At the 2019 General Conference, because what they found every General Conference is we don't have enough time to do all of the work of the church, the focus of the mission of the church, and have time to have all of our time absorbed by this conversation. So in 2019, there was a General Conference, and to deal solely with this subject, and the traditionalist had prevailed at that General Conference. Votes extremely close, extremely close. They prevailed to this degree. There was a paragraph added to the discipline, paragraph 2553, which allowed United Methodist Church to disaffiliate from the denomination with property and assets under a formula where they would honor prior commitments made, and that paragraph 2553 is the paragraph under which churches are able to disaffiliate. And when that was set in 2019, it was set with an expiration date of December 31st of 2023 of next year. Now why? Because there was going to be a 2020 General Conference. What happened in 2020? Can anybody tell me? Can we say it all together? COVID, yeah. What we should all be saying together in the church is Jesus and amen. Those two. But so what came out of that also was that the traditionalists prevailed in that they really wanted to come down hard on the conversation of homosexuality, the ordination of homosexuals. The discipline had stated that the church will not ordain a self-professing, practicing homosexual. That's in the discipline. And they were insisting upon there being trials and judgment against those who were beginning to come out, that had been ordained, but were beginning to come out of the closet. So in 2019, as we came out of that very contentious general conference, there was a group that was called together, and it was a representative group with several bishops leading it, and one of them an African bishop. And it was called, it was a 16-member mediation group. Now, they came together after the General Conference in 2019, and the mediator for the discussion was Kenneth Feinberg. Kenneth Feinberg is a well-known arbitrator, mediation, resolution individual. The name may come to mind, Feinberg. He was in charge of the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund. Yep. And he was also the person who administrated the compensation fund for the BP Deepwater Horizon disaster. Major credentials in working with groups. And the group that came together, there were 16 individuals, and they represented all of the various groups within United Methodism. I didn't know we had that many. I knew we had traditionalists. I knew we had progressives, and I knew we had centrists, okay? The groups that had representatives participate here were the UMC Next. The first three are centrist groups, Mainstream UMC and Uniting Methodist. The next four groups were Traditionalists, Conservative, the Confessing Movement, Good News, Wesleyan Covenant Association, and IRD/UM Action, and that group I'm not familiar with. The other three I am. And then there were four from traditional side, four from the progressive side. Those four groups had representatives for Affirmation, Methodist Federation for Social Action, and Reconciling Ministries Network, and the UM Queer Clergy Caucus. Those four. Okay. What came out of that was an agreement of, it was called the Protocol of Reconciliation and Grace, leading to separation. It was a plan for an amicable separation within United Methodism between the two groups that had been fighting, both groups agreeing that we're spending too much time fighting over issues that have nothing to do with proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ, nothing to do with making disciples for Jesus Christ, and being in mission to Christ Church. So they all signed on. They all agreed to the protocol, and it had great hope. It just had such promise. Everybody was taking a deep sigh of relief because it was going to be an amicable divorce separation be healthy for all. Again, what happened? COVID. They postponed General Conference till 2021 the first time. In 2021, they had to postpone it to 2022. And in March of this year, the General Conference Planning Commission announced that it would not meet, General Conference would not meet until 2022. And the reasons are that we're a worldwide denomination, and there were delegates in other regions outside of the United States where the delegates could not get vaccines, to be able to get visas, and to be able to travel. So that was the rationale for putting it off. On the same day that they announced that, the Wesleyan Covenant Association announced that they were launching the Global Methodist Church. And then following that, which broke all of the agreements in the protocol from the conservative side, and on June 7th, the day before annual conference at Marion, some of the progressives and some of the traditionalists said they would no longer support the protocol because the other side had violated the protocol. Good Lord, this sounds like Washington, D.C. conversation. Let me, trying to give you a little bit of background, okay? Our conference, I don't know what the other conferences are doing. I know some conferences in the application of paragraph 2553 have taken a more stringent approach to it. Our bishop, Bishop Julius Trimble, and our conference leadership, his cabinet, conference leadership, have taken a very grace-filled approach, not committed to not making it difficult for churches to leave who choose to do so under paragraph 2553 of the discipline. Now, that paragraph only allows a church to disaffiliate over their deeply held religious convictions against homosexuality. That is the basis. There aren't, you can't, the argument, you know, that's the churches that are choosing to disaffiliate are disaffiliating over that issue. Now, I want you to make an informed decision. I want you to be in a discernment process, and I want you to succeed. And what are you going to do after you do whatever you're going to do? What are you going to do then? Not a trick question. You're going to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of this community and the surrounding area and the state and the nation and the world. It's what the church is called to be, to make disciples. Go ye, therefore, and make disciples. So you're disaffiliating over this subject matter. The Global Methodists have taken a position, a clearly stated position against homosexuality and the ordination of homosexual pastors. But a good deal of their argument also is over church doctrine. And our church doctrine in the Book of Discipline, our doctrine, our theological statement, our Constitution have not changed. And it's almost impossible to change them. Those documents. So where are we? Churches that choose to disaffiliate are to enter into a disaffiliation process, which I understand that you've had discussion on. And I do think it's important for all of you to understand that what are the costs? Now, you are not, in disaffiliating, you're not paying for your property or for your assets. Property and assets leave with the affiliating church after they've met the requirements of 2553, which means any and all costs associated with disaffiliation, including legal fees incurred by either party. The churches are advised to have an attorney, and that would be their cost, but under the disaffiliation formula, churches are also to pay the legal cost of the annual conference because you're a United Methodist Church. Any unpaid apportionments or tithe for the past 12 months, immediately prior to the disaffiliation date, and then an additional 12 months beyond. You're current on your tithe obligation, then you've met the last 12 months. Why are you paying forward 12 months? Because the annual conference at which we are a connectional church. Every church's pastor, every church's lay leader or lay delegate to annual conference have a vote. We adopt a budget for the annual conference. We commit ourselves to the mission of the church as the Indiana Conference of the United Methodist Church. And therefore, in supporting that at annual conference, that's what prevailed, then there's an obligation to fund it 12 months forward. That's the rationale there. A pro-rated share of the Indiana Conference unfunded pension obligations, and there's a formula for that. What are the unfunded pension obligations? We have a number of older clergy, mostly older, but a good number of them, who were not in a funded pension liability program. Their pensions were covered by annual conference apportionments, what we used to call apportionments. I began ministry in '83, was my first church, I believe, under a new pension program that was funded. But there is an obligation to cover the pensions of the older clergy, and there's a formula for that. And then a prorated share of the Indiana Conference's retiree health insurance subsidy obligation. Also, those older retirees or retirees that the conference has, over past action, over many decades, have committed a, not the full, I assure you, they don't cover all of a retired clergy's insurance, but there's a subsidy. Don't quote me on this, I'm wanting to say of around $125 a month for those clergy who stay in the insurance program of the conference. So those are things that are based on, call it a payout, call it a settlement. It is a church disaffiliating, honoring past obligations that were made by the church. And then there are other things, details. Certainly, if you proceed with this, your leadership needs to be fully aware. Any outstanding pension health insurance balances prior to disaffiliation, reimbursement of grants, salary subsidy that may have been issued by the Indiana Conference for the past 12 months, any unpaid loans or other obligations to the United Methodist entities. Now, also, you need to be aware of the consequences of disaffiliation. If you are going to proceed with calling a church conference here at Salem to have all members of the church vote either to disaffiliate or not to disaffiliate, that church conference needs to be held prior to October 1. And I think there's already been a request of the conference superintendent for a date.
Can you tell us, Greg, why that is? I mean, if the disaffiliation is until December 31st of 23,
yeah.
Why do we have to be so soon?
Okay, because if you look through, and I made reference to this at, if you go to the conference website, and it's so easy to find the details that you need, inumc.org, any of you can do this. inumc.org, Google it. It'll take you to the conference homepage. On that homepage, there are 5 boxes across the bottom. Click on local church. That'll take you to the local church homepage, and the first box on the upper left on that page says disaffiliation. That takes you into a selection of 7 documents that give you all the detail that's needed. Now, why October 1 is because if you, our bishop called, or our conference has called a special session of our annual conference for November the 19th of this year, 2022. And for churches to be able to do everything that needs to be done before that date, under paragraph 2553, the vote needs to be completed by October 1st. If you're ready to proceed on that, I would think you could have it by the second Sunday of September. We can talk about that, but at any rate, and then after the vote, 2/3, you have to follow the process of informing every member of the church of the purpose of this called church conference and what it's being called for. And at a special called church conference, you can only deal with what it's been called for. So you'd have a motion for disaffiliation. And every member needs to be informed in writing 10 days before this is under the discipline, under church law, 10 days prior to the date of the called church conference. And it needs to be announced from the pulpit 2 Sundays. So 10 days notice in writing. This is a big decision. Every church member has a vote. Not constituents, not non-members, but every church member has a vote as to whether to leave the denomination or to stay with it.
We've had questions before about members. There is no age limit on that.
If they're a member,
they're 14 and a member, they get to vote. And that was a question.
You know, that is a good question. I've not been asked that anywhere. I'll need to check. That would be stated in paragraph 2553 that I made a copy of. I'll check that here.
We can get an answer to that.
Yeah, right. We can get an answer to that. Okay. But then after, if you vote, if 2/3 of the congregation's membership in attendance, you have to be in attendance. You don't send a proxy vote. You're in attendance at the called church conference, and 2/3 of those voting need to vote for disaffiliation. Now, beyond that then, your leadership team will need to get very busy. Within 5 days, they need to submit the disaffiliation information form to the conference chancellor. Conference chancellor's the attorney. And then all of the documents required have to be turned in to the conference chancellor by October 14th. And you meet all the criteria. I'm not going to read through all these details, but you got all your ducks in a row. You're all set. Then at the special called annual conference, it's a Zoom annual conference on November 19th. And you need to be sure that your delegate is registered for it. It's a Zoom, so everybody will need to be registered, clergy and delegates.
Correct. I have a question about something we covered.
Okay.
We have a lot of shut-ins within our church, an older congregation, what can be done if they cannot attend that meeting? If physically they cannot attend? Is there any?
If you can't get them here, then they're not participating in the decision by vote. There are no proxies.
Okay. I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and if this is a major decision for a church to leave the denomination, and so that's why your own discernment process and following the process, the procedures is very important. Now, those churches that disaffiliate at the annual conference has to approve the request or the action for disaffiliation. That's why they've called the November 19th special conference. After you're voted on, you have to have all of the requirements, all of the cash submitted by November 29th, and then as of December 1st, you are disaffiliated and no longer a United Methodist congregation. Yes, Virginia.
One of my greatest concerns about this has been is that this change in the discipleship is not. The change in the discipleship will not be voted on until 24. Since that will not be voted on, we don't know how that vote's going to go. It may stay traditional, or it may go progressive. Why are you forcing all of the churches to make a decision as if that vote has already been taken? Why do we have to disaffiliate before that vote is taken? Because then all these churches that are disaffiliating will be taken out of that vote.
This has been moving along very rapidly, especially since that March date, on the same day that the General Conference Planning Commission announced that we wouldn't meet till 2024. The same day the Wesleyan Covenant Association announced they would launch the Global Methodist Church effective May 1. And they've also been very clear, I mean, they've been clear that they are contacting United Methodist churches and inviting them to come join the Global Methodist Church. I don't have a problem with that as long as the information they're provided is true. Speaking the truth in love. And
we not know that truth until 2024.
May I interject something?
Well, let me share also. I'll let. Have you had a Global Methodist representative?
No.
Okay. They need to speak to what they believe and what they hold. They launched May 1st, and I think you will want to know prior to making a decision what your future will look like in terms of who you choose to go, where you choose to go. You have options of being independent, as we've said, Global Methodist, Indiana Wesleyan. It's a matter, though, of understanding their processes for receiving a congregation, and Global Methodist fairly clear on that. But the Global Methodist launched May 1st. They have not held a convening general conference of the Global Methodist Church. They have a working draft of a book of doctrine and discipline, which is a draft, because the general conference, when they convene it, will adopt what their book of discipline will be. Doctrine. They call it a book of doctrine and discipline. So I'm just...
Well, I appreciate going and joining them. There's a certain procedure and process.
Yeah.
And but this boils down to a 2024 decision whether openly gay clergy is required in our church or you make a choice to not have that mandate.
Okay.
The protocol had stated, and the Council of Bishops have said they still, that the protocol of reconciliation and grace is still properly before. It's a legislative piece that's already in the legislative process for 2024 as a guide. But it states in that if it's adopted, and we don't know what we don't know, we can't.
Greg,
no.
can I interrupt for just a second, please? There is nothing anywhere that says we have to have a vote on disaffiliation this year. I mean, we can never. I think the United Methodist Church, our timing, if we want to hit a timing before October 1st, we need to get busy. There's a few people who believe that we need to do it now before things change. The 2553 is being interpreted different ways in other areas. Our bishop's being very good to us. That is for an immediate vote on this disaffiliation. That doesn't come down from the United Methodist Church. It comes down from our local church, a few of us in this church that believe that the United Methodist Church is changing quickly. And Greg, I'll give you the opportunity to say more or less on this if you choose.
Well,
there is a church within 10 miles of here that their administrative board has voted to back their ministers if they have same-sex marriages today. So that is happening today, and that is the direction that we feel, a lot of us feel, that the United Methodist Church, the Indiana Conference, the whole world church, that they're going. But it's a guess. It is based on the resolutions voted on at conference. There's other churches that are actually taking action right now and going against the Book of Discipline, and that's a fact. Is that correct, Greg? That the church did that?
That are not in compliance with the Book of Discipline.
Correct.
But when the protocol was signed, all of those who signed the protocol agreed to suspend any filing of charges or moving forward with prosecution.
Right.
That was all part of that agreement.
And I realize that both sides
opened a door.
Yeah.
That opened a door at that point. But
Right.
that's what was agreed to.
But in answer to Virginia, to your question about why we have to do it today, we don't have to by the United Methodist Church. They're not requiring us to have a vote, but we are allowed to have a vote, and the time frame to disaffiliate, if we're doing it quickly, we have to have the vote by October 1st.
Let me answer a question here, because it's an important one. The understanding was that under reconciliation and grace, that a church could choose to say, we will accept a gay pastor, and we will allow same-sex weddings, marriages in our church. A church could say, we are a traditional church, we will not accept a gay clergy person, and we will not have gay marriages, weddings conducted in our church. That was the understanding. Nobody being forced into something that it hasn't been adopted yet. No, it hasn't. But as far as, now, if you don't get in on this round, this is going to proceed into next year. And unless the bishop and leadership, unless they call a spring, maybe disaffiliation special session of one day, then it will, the next disaffiliation date would be our annual conference in June of next year, which is 2022. That would, any church wanting to disaffiliate under paragraph 2553 would need to do so before it expires at the end of December 31st of next year, of 2023. Now, I'm telling you that because General Conference then meets in 2024, And we don't know what will change there. We don't know. We can't know.
I just want to confirm. You're trying so hard and some of your dates are, I'm confused, but you meant the June 23 conference that's already scheduled, our Indiana annual conference.
Yeah.
Still could.
Annual conference.
Right. Could still take a vote at that conference for any churches that had met all the requirements of paragraph 2553, still would have that conference that could be voted on if we got everything handled, because
under the discipline, under that paragraph,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Right now, everybody's focused on that November date
right.
of this fall.
Right.
But then, if you don't make that, it would be our annual conference in June of 2023. Yeah.
What would happen if we choose to not do anything until after the conference in 2024? Would there still be a disaffiliation process, or is there any indication of what that would entail?
I would hope so. I will tell you that. I would most definitely hope so. But I can't fully answer that. The bishop and the conference leadership has made clear that we wish everyone well in this separation so that we can all get on with focusing on our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and making disciples for him, regardless of which way, where we end up, okay? I'm not sure how. My fear is, my friends in the traditionalists who are joining the Global Methodist Church, my fear is, did they jump the gun? I can't answer. This is just my fear, because are they going to have representation at the 2024 General Conference? See, the last votes have been close. Will they, if they leave the denomination, have they diluted their vote? I can't answer that. I can't answer that. My understanding is that those elected delegates to the 2024 General Conference were elected for the 2020, and they are still delegates until that conference meets. And my understanding is if we had a delegate, lay or clergy, it would be predominantly lay, in a church that disaffiliates, that they can transfer their membership to a United Methodist church and thereby still are a delegate as a United Methodist to vote at the 2024 General Conference. And this all, I know we've been in the weeds. I know I took you into the weeds, but just in terms of making one thing, just to be attentive to, these are concerns and your leadership would attend to these, but on the date of your affiliation, let's say it's December 1st, you lose on that date your tax exempt status as a church, as a nonprofit. Your tax exempt status is under, there's one tax exempt status for all of United Methodism in the United States. So you lose that on December 1st. You need to be sure, that's why you need an attorney. You need to be sure you're setting up your own 501c3, or if on that date you're going to go, I don't know how quickly you join, but anyway, to be sure that that's covered. Does that make sense? Okay. I refer you to those the conference website resources. The conference has, over the course of the last, since annual conference actually, have added and expanded and provided more helpful detail, because the conference is not being obstructionist here at all. So,
I just, real quick, Greg, I want to thank you for coming. I know you've got to go, but thank you for coming. Obviously, this is a passionate subject that this church has embraced, And we appreciate you coming from the conference. I've got two questions. Number one, Bishop Trimble, when is he retiring?
He's not retiring.
Okay.
My understanding is he is not retiring. That's a good question, though.
I mean, obviously, under his leadership, this is we're in a good state to have these discussions.
We've had bishops retire under COVID, and some under health. The end of their episcopacy was forced by their own health issues, okay? Which means we have bishops within our jurisdiction of 8 states that are covering 2 annual conferences. So, and right now, both Dakotas and Montana, is 1 annual conference.
Wow.
Think about
It's a lot of ground to cover.
Okay, so what our Judicial Council of the Church has stated that fall jurisdictional conferences can meet this fall to elect bishops. That's what jurisdictional conferences do. And when they meet, they're meeting in Fort Wayne, I think in November. But when they meet and elect bishops to fill the vacancies, then the General Conference delegation committee assigns those bishops to the episcopal areas that they serve.
But Bishop Trimble does not have any intention. We do not have a...
And those take effect December 1st.
Okay.
No, April 1st. What I'm sharing this for is for this reason. They may not reassign Bishop Trimble to Indiana.
I see.
I would hope they would. This would be his last 4 years. I'd hate to, as solid as things are in the state.
No, but it certainly could change the political climate if he is not. I'm just wanting everybody to know that. My last question for you.
We could have one of the people that we are nominating,
right?
If elected, could be returned here.
Okay.
Okay.
No, I appreciate that. I just my last question is, how many churches have chose to disaffiliate, maybe in Indiana, to give everybody an idea, or none, 3, 7, 42?
I don't have figures statewide. I've asked several times. I know that in our district, in the North Central District, approximately just under 20% are in the process of disaffiliation. That includes churches that have requested the settlement costs. And some of those may choose, well, we're not going to exit at this time. So, but roughly just under 20% in our district. I don't know what it is statewide.
At general conference, or at annual conference, didn't we vote on approximately 17 to 20 churches?
Individual, that's conference-wide, statewide. That was statewide.
Yeah. Conference-wide for the state, we had 17 to 20 churches that disaffiliated, and we voted on, and they were approved. And
out of roughly 1,000 churches in the state. Yeah.
Okay. And one other thing I'd like to ask: what is the age requirement for the bishop's position that they have to retire? That was brought up a number of different times, as far as I understood.
Well,
it was 72.
United Methodist clergy have to retire by age 72 under the Book of Discipline.
And the bishop is currently how old? 69-ish?
I don't know.
He made the comment at conference that he had 2 to 3 years, and he was definitely going to stay in his position that long. So that's the way I remember it. But
hi, I'm going way back early into your presentation. You said if a church disaffiliates, their property and assets go with them. What is property? Is it just the land? Is it the building? Is it what is property?
It's a property. Under law, property is anything you own, anything that's yours, and assets too. After the obligations are met.
Well, I think I've heard we don't own the building, somehow the big Methodist church owns the building. I think I've heard that.
Under all United Methodist churches, forever and ever, under the trust clause, are property of the annual conference, okay? If a church closes or cease to continue, the property under the trust clause has reverted to the annual conference. All right, now 2553, that important piece of legislation changed that at this time under that paragraph you leave, and what the conference does then is that's where legal costs are involved in all of this. The annual conference is going to release the deed that the conference holds in the trust, under the trust clause, will release it to the congregation.
Okay. And then just a statement. I thought it's kind of inconsiderate of the powers that be that aren't letting members who are physically challenged to get to church, physically because of age, whatever, not to come up with some kind of a process where they could vote from their nursing home, their retirement center, or if they're homebound. There has to be, could have been some way where no member of this church, but you or representatives like you could go and get their vote.
I understand that.
We know it's not you, right?
No. Well, it's like, see, I'm a citizen of the United States. I don't agree with everything that our government does. I'm not going to give up my citizenship. I also personally, I'm getting off track here, I personally believe that the sanctity of the ballot box is sacred. And people should appear and in private cast their vote. Now, that's probably much of United Methodism is, you know, we have an executive branch, the bishops. They don't make law; they are to enforce it. We have a legislative branch. We have annual conferences and general conference, and we have a judicial council, which is our Supreme Court for United Methodism. And the Supreme Court for United Methodism has to assure that everything is in compliance with the Constitution of the Church under the Book of Discipline, duly adopted law. I believe in.
So right now then, the conference don't sanction gay marriages, right? They won't vote on that till 2024?
The conference does not sanction gay marriages under our Book of Discipline. That is right.
They won't vote on until 2024.
Correct.
Also,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
My brother says that he's got the title to this building.
Well, surprise.
They got the title to the building.
No, they don't. The courts have upheld that as a United Methodist Church, your property is under the trust clause, doesn't matter what the deed says. It doesn't matter. The conference, courts have ruled the conference, it's conference's property. That's why this is important, is for the conference to release any claim. Okay?
I realize that it would probably be, after you've gone through all the trouble and all the paperwork and take a vote for disaffiliation, it might seem a little stretch that you would change your mind, but is it true that if between taking our vote and doing everything, until it's voted on at conference, be that the special called conference or the June annual conference, until it's voted on then, you still could change your mind and ask it not to be voted on?
You
don't know that for sure.
I'm not a Pharisee. I'm
All
not
right.
a legalist. No, I just have to say I'm not a lawyer. That's what I was trying to say. However, it's not official until the Annual conference, yeah. And also, you have to meet all of those requirements and turn over the money and all of that. So, you know, if you've not done all of that by the cutoff deadline, then you're not even going to be on that disaffiliation list. Okay. So, yeah.
I have a question. I don't think it's directed towards you. It's more towards Bob, Ben, and them.
Yeah.
He's talking about we have to have money to disaffiliate. And I know at our last meeting that we had, we were supposed to check into that. Do we have a number to even know that this is even something financial we can even do?
We do. So we have $350,000 in the bank in assets here. And the disaffiliation cost, Bob, help me, was it $89,000?
It was shy of 100,000, yes, somewhere in that.
And that doesn't include all the costs, because we would have legal costs. We would have legal costs.
Retitling the property.
Retitling the property, filing for tax exempt status. I mean, that could be another $10,000. So I think we all kind of collectively agree the number is a little bit shy of $100,000.
I'm going to end my portion just by saying, as you pray for discernment in all of this, the most important question to me is, what would Jesus have us do? And why are we here? And why are we taking this action? Is it in line with the gospel? Jesus is silent on this subject matter. That doesn't mean you can't act because of your own truly held convictions. I'm not arguing against that. I have found, I'm 68, my daughters are 65 and 60.
Your daughter?
65. 35. Well, you can tell I'm 68 because I'm not making sense. No offense. Don't take offense. My middle daughter's 35. The youngest is 31. This whole discussion on homosexuality is a non-issue with them. They're very committed Christians, but what a lot of our young people do not understand is, and why they're turned off by the church, is why are you Christians always fighting among yourselves? Why are you always fighting amongst yourselves? And why do we feel like all we're hearing is judgment and seeing hypocrisy? All of the polls support that. Now, there are exceptions, I know, but I'm concerned about the future of Christ's church. I don't care what denominational label you put on it. I'm concerned about the future of Christ's church. Are we faithful to proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ and what it means to be in a right relationship with God through Jesus? So, and you didn't have me come preach today, but I hope I've helped a little bit, shed some light. I've tried to be totally transparent. I think that's important.
Greg, thank you very much. I am very happy that you were here. On your end, you did a much better job explaining where we're at with the process than I would have ever done. So, okay, now, Ben, I don't know what you want to do next, but we kind of talked about money, and I know that Eric has talked to me this week about some things with money, and I'd like to give him a little mic time. Ready?
Excuse me. Yeah, I'll try to be brief and not get into all the detail, but I guess I still have some questions rather than answers at the moment. But one being, Greg, you referred to the formula for some of these numbers. Is the detail calculation formula available on the website, and does it include rationale as to why they use those factors?
All that detail is there. All of it is. And there's also a video from West Town that I think it's around 18 minutes that explains it. But no, all those details All those details are there. I'm sorry, all those details are there. Oh, one other thing you might think about, who's your pastor going to be December 1st? Yeah, well, you need that, and whoever you go with, you need to understand where your pastors are coming from.
And the reason why I want to put the microphone in front of people that are talking, we're videotaping, that way people that are listening can hear it.
To go back for a moment on the number issue of the roughly 100,000 round number, the largest number in that is the calculated retirement liability, and it's 73,000 and change, I believe, something in that magnitude. A follow-on to that is the health retiree health insurance subsidy that Greg referred to, and I've got the number, but without looking it up, it's in the $6,000 range on that. So if you add that to the 73, you come up out of, I don't know, about 82,000 roughly, just on those two components. So that's obviously the elephant in the room from the financial side. I've got personal opinion, rationale why. Won't go into all that detail. It's getting to be a lengthy meeting already. I've bounced that off of a couple individuals here just for kind of a second opinion, sanity check or whatever. So there'll be some internal discussion going on regarding that. Greg, I don't know if that is a hard, fast number. I know it's calculated and it comes out to the cents. So it's a formula-driven number. It's not just an estimate by somebody. But is there flexibility in that number to address unique circumstances depending on a church? Because if the formula is derived by general averages, so forth, factors, say factors in the formula that doesn't apply to Salem's history, is there any recourse or reconsideration to request an appeal on that number? Because in the 2553, if I have that right, it does indicate that the number will be set by the conference. So does the conference have flexibility? Is this a formula that the conference has, or is this the formula that the, well, I won't use world or global, those terms are being used elsewhere, but the United Methodist total umbrella, is that formula driven down to the conference by somebody else, or does the conference have flexibility to revisit the number that was calculated?
You're getting your steps in. I really can't speak specifically to that. I do know there have been a few churches that have questioned the numbers given, and they've looked at them again and have made adjustments where appropriate. But beyond that, that conversation would need to take place with the conference, not because I can't really speak to that. The formulas, all those details are there, and again, it's above my pay grade.
Well, it's kind of above my pay grade, or two, not in my expertise, but when I refer to unique circumstances within Salem, especially under the retirement topic, from my over 50 years of being involved in Salem, to the best of my memory, we have not had a full-time minister at Salem in over 50 years. We have had no ministers under Salem services that would have been eligible or be retired. Our ministers have always been part-time, either seminary students and or ministers that were already retired and chose to come back voluntarily to offer their services for which they were paid for on an ongoing basis for services rendered. So I have some real difficulty in the number that the whoever, conference or above, is suggesting or demanding that be Salem's portion. It doesn't fit the circumstances. If we were a large church and had a history of one or multiple full-time ministers, that would be a different scenario.
I can only share my experience. When I attended Christian Theological Seminary, and during the 3.5 years that I was there, 3 of those years I served a part-time student appointment. I was ordained a deacon 1 year into that appointment, and even as a part-time pastor qualified for pension those last 2 years that I was in a part-time appointment. I do know that the conference, they have records that go way back, and with Westpath, I mean, they go to records is my understanding, but ask about it. Okay, I'd ask about it, but that's my understanding.
Okay, and I'm going to get in the middle of this. The reason why we're going to question and hold the conference to the T on defending our dollars, I'm a trustee for the church, and it tells us to take care of the church's assets every way we can. And we trustees are responsible for using the money that you've donated to the church that we've raised in responsible ways. So we're going to question it. If we think it's too much, we're going to question it until it's proven that it's the right number from that aspect. Not that we want to fight, not that we want to do anything, but we are stewards of the money given to the church.
Let me add one more thought here. Regarding retirement benefits and so forth and the process of disaffiliation. If churches choose not to disaffiliate but to remain in, will their apportionments be increased to fund this unfunded pension liability? So in effect, if they do, then I could see a scenario where the churches would in effect be either being charged as they leave and or paying the equivalent unfunded amount maybe over a period of time of years that they stay affiliated with it. So one way of looking at it, is it a cost to exit, or is it a cost that's going to be attempted to be recuperated going forward whether you leave or not? I don't know an answer, so I'm just posing the question because we have to kind of look at that to say, okay, if we would be expected to pay $73,000 as we leave, well, that's one scenario. But if we stay, are we going to be expected to pay $7,000 a year for the next 10 years and hence pay the same 73 out to catch up and make everybody whole on the pension?
You continue supporting you're continuing to support that obligation moving forward. The concern I hear is it's going to be more. I don't know. We're a lot alike. I stay up at night. All this stuff spinning in my head. How's the pension and health insurance going to work in the denomination you're moving to? I mean, you're going to continue to have those church support obligation. I do know that the Global Methodists have said that the conference support is going to be half of what it is in the United Methodist Church. I've seen that number or that percentage, but there are going to be costs moving forward, no matter what. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have a question at this point? Okay, sorry, Andy. I didn't know if you were just waving at me or what.
I have two things that's been bothering me. One, during this discussion, I think the formula that's been using should depend on how many members you have per church, not as a church. Because some places have 80 people, some have 800. There should be a formula for the differentiating of members. The second thing I have to say is when Jesus told us to go out and create disciples. We do that. He did not say go out and do it with straight people or gay people or anybody. He said all people. And then centuries later, we had churches that would not let blacks in. And then all of a sudden, they got into church and things were fine. And here recently, our government is giving in and has made it more acceptable for the black people to voice their opinion and have things that they want. And now here we are wondering about gays, okay? We all love God. We're all children of God.
Okay, Eric's got another point.
Yeah, a non-pension question, but a generality. Why does the liberal or progressive faction get to retain the use of the phrase United Methodist Church when obviously there is no United Methodist Church anymore, for this reason and others probably? But why do they get to convey the misperception that it is a United Methodist Church? Should not that term be abandoned by all factions and not be allowed to be used by any either side, or retire that term altogether and nobody gets to use it?
We've had there have been some progressive churches that have gone off too because they weren't happy. It's a matter of who's leaving. Who's leaving? Those that are choosing to disaffiliate are the ones leaving. The United Methodist Church retains its, who it is. Are things going to change? Yeah.
An opt-out or a personal opinion, though, I find that I personally don't feel I am leaving the United Methodist Church. I feel that the current trend of the United Methodist Church is leaving my lifetime beliefs. So why do those that have been in the church for years, the more traditionalists have probably been in there longer on a seniority basis, using averages or so forth. So why does I'll deem it a minority, in effect, create a coup situation or a hostile takeover movement? If in the commercial or industrial world, it would be viewed as a hostile takeover. And so why are the traditionalists being, in effect, forced or encouraged to leave, and the hostile minority gets to assume control and the authority and the political stature and claim assets for an entity when they're the minority?
I don't know that you can put an answer to that.
On the question of charging, that the formula should calculate based on size, there are a couple huge United Methodist churches nationwide that have disaffiliated with the payout of over $2 million. So the formula is going to take into effect. We've got one in the conference that I'm aware of, it's about 600,000. So that does factor in because it's a larger church.
And disaffiliating applies to both ends of this perspective. It's not just conservative, it's progressive. I'm not sure, I don't have any numbers, but the disaffiliation process goes either way. So there are, like they said, like Greg said, there are churches on the other end, the progressive churches, that are disaffiliating as well, or have the possibility of it. Was that what you were going to? Okay, all right. Now, I was asked at a meeting at Westfield. We went to one of the conference meetings at Westfield. And after that, we were around having a discussion. And the gentleman asked, why is this all of a sudden a big issue about homosexuality? And why all of a sudden is that more important? And I didn't have a good answer for that. But I have come up with an answer. I don't know if it's good or not. Currently, the sin is a sin is a sin is a sin. We've heard that all of our teachings. Right now, it hasn't changed. But the possibility of a change to the book of discipline has focused on that. So my only answer for why are we talking about homosexuality, if somebody walks through the front door today, we don't ask them if they're gay, straight, or what they are. We welcome them in, and we all work on all of our sins together. We all come in and worship God and love Jesus. Okay? So we don't ask the question at the door. The only thing that has changed is the fact that there is a question about the book of discipline, and that is where it focuses on homosexuality in this conversation. So that is now my answer when I'm asked that question again. So, Perry, would you like to say anything? Wrap it up. That's a good signal. I hope we've helped. I mean, you know, we're all making this up as we go. We're trying to do the right thing. Every one of us, we all have difference of opinions. I am by no means a good speaker. Greg, you've done a great job bringing out facts of this situation. Thank you very much, because I would have stumbled all over myself trying to even get to half of it. So, okay, all right. Anyone else parting shot? Andy?
We have about 50 employees where I work in the dealership. Maybe 10 of them are gay. We don't care. They look like normal people. They treat you normal. What they do between themselves, they keep it to themselves. So, what's the big deal?
And I will not go on more on that, because that's a personal thing.
You know what's made this difficult? At the beginning of the service, all of you were talking about chicken noodle dinner. And I sat there, I tried to concentrate on your sermon, Perry, but all I could do is smell chicken noodle dinner. So maybe it's time for us to go eat. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Ben?
All right, let's pray. Loving God, we just give you thanks for this time together. Thank you for answers. Thank you for questions. We appreciate your presence in our meeting today. Just continue to be with us as we discern your will for this church. Your will, not our will. I want to pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thanks, everybody, for staying.